I used to think retirement was something far away, a kind of finish line I would cross someday in the distant future. But recently, at 65 years old, I sat down with a handful of people much older than me. Some were 75, some were close to 80, and what they shared with me changed the way I look at the years I have left. Let me ask you a question. Have you ever wondered what people really regret once they reach the twilight of their lives? Not the small stuff like wishing they had bought a different car or worked in a different office. I am talking about the big regrets. The kind that sit heavy in your chest when you look back and realize time is gone and there is no way to get it back. That is exactly what I wanted to know. So I asked them, 7 or 8 older retirees, men and women who have lived through wars, raised families, worked long decades in jobs they sometimes loved and sometimes hated. They had lived the life that I am just beginning to step into. And when I asked them about their regrets, they did not hesitate. Their answers came quickly, almost like they had been waiting for someone younger to finally ask. Here is the truth. Every single one of them told me the same thing. It was not about money in the bank. It was not about titles on the wall. It was not even about the mistakes we sometimes think will haunt us forever. Their regrets were deeper. Their regrets were about how they used their time. One gentleman, 79 years old, leaned back in his chair and said, "The only thing I wish is that I had started retirement sooner. I thought I had more time. I thought I would get to all the things on my list. But by the time I finally stepped away from work, I was already running out of energy." That hit me, because I realized retirement is not just a chapter at the end. It is not a waiting room for the last stage of life. It is life itself, and how you enter it, how you spend those first years, will shape whether you carry peace or regret when you reach their age. So in this video, I am going to share the 5 biggest regrets these older retirees opened up about, not as a list of complaints, but as a set of warnings we can use to live differently while we still have the chance. And let me say this before we dive in. If you are watching this and you are still working, or maybe you are just beginning your retirement, I want you to know something. It is not too late. Hearing these stories can feel heavy, but they are also a gift. Because when someone hands you their regrets, what they are really doing is giving you a second chance. So stay with me, because these 5 lessons might just change the way you spend your money, your time, and even the way you treat your body. They might give you the courage to say yes to the life you want, instead of waiting until it is too late. I promise, by the end of this video, you will see retirement through a completely different lens. The very first regret almost every older retiree shared with me was simple. They all wished they had retired earlier. Now think about that for a moment. Most of these men and women stopped working at 65. That was the standard in their generation. And yet when they looked back from the age of 75 or 80, they all said the same thing. They wished they had stepped away sooner. One man told me that by the time he finally retired, he already felt tired all the time. The long days of work had drained him. He thought retirement would be the start of adventure, but instead, it felt like the end of energy. He said, "If I could go back, I would have walked away at 60, maybe even 58. I would have given myself more years when my body still wanted to move, and my mind still wanted to learn new things." That conversation reminded me of something important. Retirement is not a finish line. It is a doorway, and the longer you wait to walk through it, the less time you have on the other side. I know some people say, "Well, I cannot afford to retire early. I need the paycheck. I need the benefits." And of course, those things matter. But what these older retirees were telling me was this: time itself is worth more than money. Because once time is gone, it does not come back. You cannot earn more of it. You cannot invest it and hope it grows. The clock only moves in one direction. One woman, 76 years old, put it in a way I will never forget. She said, working longer felt like saving a seat at a show that had already ended. In other words, she kept waiting for the perfect moment, only to realize the moment had already slipped by. That was the first regret. Waiting too long, believing there would always be more time. The second regret surprised me at first, but the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. They all wished they had spent more money earlier in retirement. Let me explain. When you are younger, you save. You watch every dollar. You tell yourself that you need to prepare for the future. And of course, being responsible is good. But many of these older retirees told me that once they finally had the chance to spend, they no longer had the strength or the health to enjoy it. One man told me how he had dreamed of traveling with his wife across Europe. They kept putting it off. First, because of work. Then because of bills. Then because they wanted to make sure they had enough saved. By the time they finally felt secure, his wife had health problems that made flying impossible. The dream was gone. The money was still there. But the opportunity was not. Another retiree said it this way: I should have spent more when I was 70. Not saved it for 80. At 70, I could walk 10 miles. At 80, I can barely walk across the street. That is the truth about aging. It is not just about how much you have in the bank. It is about what you are still able to do. And the ability to do things fades faster than we expect. When they told me this, I thought about all the people I know who are still living like misers even after retirement. They have the savings. They have the pension. They have the nest egg. But they are so afraid of running out that they end up running out of life instead. One woman, 80 years old, said, I was always saving for tomorrow. But tomorrow never came. Now I sit here with money I will never use. And I wish I had just taken my grandkids to Disneyland one more time when I could still keep up with them. Hearing that hit me like a warning bell, because it made me realize something. You can waste money. Yes, but you can also waste time by refusing to spend the money you already earned. So, the second regret is clear. They wish they had been a little braver with their wallets. They wish they had said yes to experiences while they still had the body to enjoy them. When you put those first two regrets together, a picture starts to form. It is not really about money at all. It is about time. Retiring earlier gave them more time. Spending earlier gave them better use of that time. And once those windows closed, they never opened again. The third regret was the one that carried the most weight. Almost every retiree I spoke with said they wished they had taken better care of their health. Now let me tell you something. When a man who has seen 78 years looks you in the eye and says, protect your health, because once it slips away, you will never get it back. You feel it in your bones. It is not a theory. It is not a motivational poster. It is the voice of someone who has lived long enough to know the truth. One man admitted that during his working years, he had lived on fast food and long hours. He thought he could fix it later, but later never came. By the time he finally retired, his body was already paying the price. Bad knees, high blood pressure, and a heart that struggled to keep up. He said, I saved money for the future, but I never saved my body. And now the body I have is too weak to use the money I worked for. That line stuck with me, because it shows how often we trade health for wealth, only to discover the wealth is useless without health. I will be honest with you. This regret hit close to home for me too. I have always had a sweet tooth. Cakes, cookies, desserts, at the end of every meal. And when I listened to these older voices, I realized I cannot keep treating my health like an afterthought. One man told me, skip the dessert today, and you buy yourself another tomorrow. That image was so simple, but so powerful. Another woman, 77 years old, described it like carrying a backpack. She said, every bad habit is like a stone in your pack. You might not notice the first few, but after decades, the weight will break you down. She wished she had started walking every morning, even for just 20 minutes. She wished she had said no to the cigarettes earlier. She wished she had cared less about chasing promotions and more about protecting the only body she would ever have. The thing about health is that it does not collapse all at once. It erodes slowly. A little less energy each year, a little more pain in the joints. And then one day, you realize the trip you wanted to take, the dance you wanted to share, the mountain you wanted to climb, is no longer possible. That is why this regret became the climax for me. Because you can work longer if you need to. You can spend less if you must. But when your health is gone, no amount of work or money will bring it back. I remember one man who said something that sounded almost like a confession. He said, if I had treated my health like my 401 kelvins, I would be rich with time right now. Think about that. We plan. We save. We invest in our retirement accounts. But how many of us invest in our bodies with the same discipline I know for myself? I do not always. And maybe you do not either. We put it off. We tell ourselves we will eat better next year. Exercise when life slows down. Sleep more when the stress goes away. But life never slows down on its own. Stress never disappears. And waiting means paying the price later. When it is too late to undo the damage. One retiree told me about his friend who used to love running. He thought he would keep running in retirement. But by the time he stopped working, arthritis had taken away that joy. Now he sits and watches others run, and every step he sees reminds him of what he lost. That is what regret looks like. Not just sadness, but the daily reminder of what might have been. So here is the lesson I took from all of them. Retirement is not about how much money you have stacked up. It is about whether you still have the strength to use it. And the only way to have that strength is to start protecting your health now. Not someday. Not when the job slows down. Not when the kids are older. Now. Skip a few desserts. Take a walk after dinner. Go see the doctor instead of ignoring the pain. Treat your health like your most valuable account. Because in the end, it is the only one you will never be able to refill. This was the third regret, and it was the one they all wish they could shout from the rooftops. Take care of your health before it is too late. After talking about health, another regret rose to the surface. It was quieter, less dramatic, but it carried the same weight in the long run. Many of these older retirees told me they wished they had found a hobby, something that would give them a reason to get out of bed in the morning. One man laughed when he said it. He told me that when he first retired, he thought he would be happy sitting in front of the television. No alarm clock, no meetings, no deadlines. At first, it felt like freedom. But after a year or two, that freedom turned into emptiness. The days blurred together. Morning coffee, afternoon news, evening reruns. He said, it was like living the same day over and over. The television never gave me a reason to feel alive. Another retiree told me he eventually turned to woodworking. At 74, he picked up the craft from scratch, and he said it gave him purpose again. Every piece of wood he shaped, every project he finished, made him feel like he was still growing, still learning. He told me, I wish I had started this. Because now I know. Retirement is not about stopping. It is about shifting. You stop working for someone else, but you need to keep working for yourself, for your soul. That line struck me, because hobbies are not just entertainment. They are anchors. They keep us steady when the rest of life starts to slow down. One woman said she started writing her life story for her grandchildren. She called it her time capsule. Every evening, she would sit at her desk and write another page. She said it made her feel like her voice would live on, long after she was gone. What I learned from these stories is this: a hobby is not optional. It is not something you might do when you have spare time. It is the thread that ties meaning into the later chapters of your life. And without it, the days can feel empty, even when your calendar is free. Then came the fifth regret, the one I expected to hear, but still felt heavy when they said it out loud. They all wished they had traveled more. Now, travel does not have to mean flying across the world or climbing mountains. For some, it was as simple as visiting family in another state, or taking road trips before their bodies slowed down, but the pattern was the same. They waited too long. One man told me that he and his wife had a dream to see Alaska. They wanted to watch the glaciers, to stand under the northern lights, but they kept putting it off. There was always another reason: work, bills, later, health. By the time they finally planned the trip, his wife's mobility had declined. The cruise ship brochure sat on their table, but the journey never happened. Another woman said her biggest regret was not visiting her family more often when she could still handle long flights. She told me, "I thought I would always have another year, another summer, but years slip away faster than you think. And now, I can only wave through video calls." Hearing that broke my heart, because it reminded me how fragile our opportunities really are. We imagine the world will wait for us, that the places we want to see, the people we want to visit, will always be there. But life does not pause. It keeps moving, with or without us. One retiree described it perfectly. He said, "Travel is like a window, wide open in your 50s and 60s, half open in your 70s, barely a crack in your 80s. And when he said that, I realized the truth. Every year we wait, that window closes just a little more. So if you are listening to this, let their regrets be your reminder. If there is a place you want to see, a person you want to hug, a road you want to drive, do not keep saving it for later. Later has a way of disappearing. When I put all of this together, it painted a picture that was both sobering and inspiring. The regrets were not about things. They were not about possessions. They were about experiences not lived, passions not pursued, journeys not taken. And that is what struck me most, because in the end, none of them said, "I wish I had bought a bigger house," or "I wish I had worked a few more years." They all said they wished they had lived more fully, while they still had the chance. So here we are, 5 regrets, 5 voices from people who have lived longer than us, walked further than us, and looked back with honesty about what they would change. They told me they wished they had retired earlier, because time, not money, was the currency that truly mattered. They told me they wished they had spent more in their younger years of retirement, because money left in the bank is useless if your body can no longer enjoy what it can buy. They told me they wished they had taken better care of their health, because once your body breaks down, there are no second chances, no do-overs, no refunds. They told me they wished they had found a hobby, because life without purpose feels empty, even when your schedule is free. And finally, they told me they wished they had traveled more, Because the world does not wait, and windows of opportunity close faster than we think. These were the top 5 regrets. But what mattered most was not the regrets themselves. It was the message underneath. A message that said, do not wait. Do not keep putting off the things that matter most. Do not let the calendar steal from you the life you could be living today. When I listened to these older voices, I realized something powerful. They were not trying to make me feel guilty. They were not even sad when they shared these regrets. They were almost grateful. Because in speaking them out loud, they were offering me and you a gift. The gift of foresight. The chance to see where the road leads before we reach the same mile marker. Think about that. Most of us only learn lessons when it is too late. But here we are, being handed the wisdom of people 20 years ahead of us. It is like standing on a mountain, looking down, and seeing the path clearly marked by those who went before. And so, the question becomes, what will you do with that gift? Will you keep working year after year, waiting for the perfect time that never comes? Will you keep holding on to your money so tightly that you miss the chance to spend it on experiences that truly matter? Will you keep ignoring your health, believing tomorrow is the day you will finally change? Until tomorrow never arrives, or will you take their warnings and do something different? Right now, here is what I know. We cannot go back. We cannot rewrite the past. But we can write the rest of our story. And the pen is in our hands today. So let this be the reminder. Retire a little earlier if you can. Spend a little more on experiences while you still have the energy to enjoy them. Protect your health like it is the most valuable account you will ever own. Find a hobby that lights you up and keeps you alive inside. And for God's sake, take that trip, while your legs and your heart are still willing to carry you. Because one day, the window will close. One day, the time will run out. And when it does, I hope you will be able to look back with a smile, not with regret. So if you are watching this, I want to challenge you. Think about what you want your older self to thank you for. What can you start today? So that 20 years from now, you will look back and whisper, I am glad I did that. If this message spoke to you, do one thing right now. Click the like button. It costs nothing, but it tells the algorithm to share this wisdom with more people who might need it. And if you are not yet subscribed, join me here. This channel is all about honest conversations on retirement, on life after work, and on living without regrets. Subscribe, and let's walk this journey together. And finally, leave me a comment below. Tell me one thing you want to do before it is too late. Maybe it is a trip. Maybe it is a habit. Maybe it is just a conversation with someone you love. Put it out there. Sometimes saying it out loud is the first step to making it real. Stay healthy. Stay curious. And remember, life does not wait. So start living now.